Welcome back to Devy Degens. I am your host, Nino Brown, and you know the deal. Same place, new face. We're talking Devy, and I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. VolumePigs himself. How are we doing tonight?
Well, yeah, thanks for that. I don't know about legend, but I'm doing okay. Like I told you, man, just battling this cold for the last week. So, like I said, we're almost over the hill in terms of recovery. So that's good. Happy about that. Happy to be on the show. I know we've been trying to make this work for a little while now, right? So I'm glad we finally got a time down for the off season here. I always enjoy the off season. I think it's a great time for content as well, right? There's a lot of stuff to talk about. So happy to be here, man, and I'm looking forward to it.
You say off season, you know as well as I know there's no off season.
No,
Like me and you, so especially like he says, oh, you're putting out like 3-4 articles a week. I see all the stuff you got going on out there, you know. And if for people at home that don't know, real quick, let them know where they can follow your work.
Yeah, sure. Oh, I mean, I'm on Twitter or X, whatever you call it now. VolumePigs at VolumePigs. The link to my website's on my Twitter profile for those who are interested. And so, yeah, I mainly write about CFF. I do some Devy stuff as well. We'll talk about it today, but it's mostly CFF.
Yeah, listen, I got the newsletter. I subscribe, man. I'm tuned into what VolumePigs is putting down. I'm picking it up. So
yeah, no, I always see you on Twitter liking and retweeting stuff. So I appreciate that, man.
No problem at all. We're going to get into this segment that we call the rapid fire segment. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Right off the rip, Georgia freshman running back Nate Frazier will be a more productive freshman RB than Oklahoma RB Tyler Tatum.
It would not be that surprising. You said 5 words or less, so I'm going to keep it brief. I'll explain if you want, but
there you go. Good.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, for Georgia's backfield, it is kind of open. Trevor Etienne obviously transferred in; he's going to be RB1. But behind him, it's a little open. Oklahoma, they've got a lead back in Sawchuk, and they've got some other guys there like Javonte Barnes who might be involved as well. So, it would not be that surprising to me. Georgia typically, at least when Del McGee was there as the RB's coach, rotated a lot of players in. So a lot of guys get touches there. So sorry, this is the 5 words or less segment, already like ruining the show.
No, it's okay. It happens all the time. I write 5 words or less just to kind of keep it there. But Travis May went over the 5 words last week.
So from my articles, I do ramble a lot. So
it's all good, my man. It's all good. All right, we're going to go to the next one.
Yep.
Arizona running back, freshman Jordan Washington will finish 2024 as a top 5 freshman running back.
So this one I found was funny because I'm going to be honest, I didn't even know who this player was before you sent me the sheet today. So I looked him up. My 5 words or less response would be, I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know. It might be likely, maybe not likely.
All right, we'll hit the next one. I think you know who this guy is. After the 2024 season, Miami Hurricanes running back Mark Fletcher will be ranked as the second best running back in his class.
Yeah, doubtful, but more likely than people think.
Okay, I like that. Next one up, Iowa's Caleb Johnson will have over blank yards and over blank touchdowns.
Keeping it conservative, 500 yards, 5 touchdowns.
Okay, all right. Stanford running back Cedric Irvin Jr. will be the RB1 for the Cardinal football team entering week 1.
Probable, but with a caveat, I think the QB is actually the RB1 there.
Daniels.
You know what I mean? So
yeah. All right. And then last one on rapid fire, sleeper running back you have in this NFL draft.
Yeah. I know people are kind of tired of hearing NFL draft stuff, but Blake Watson, Memphis running back, he wasn't even at the combine, I don't think. He has a nice skill set. Again, I'm rambling here, but he's a really good pass catcher, sort of in a pass first league. He's a guy who has a nice skill set, could have a lot of upside.
I think it was absolute travesty that he didn't get an invite to the combine. I mean, this kid back-to-back years put up good numbers, good production. Yeah. Like you said, he's a pass catcher. Kind of has like, and I know it's a lazy man's comp, same school, but kind of has like an Antonio Gibson vibe to him, right? Yeah. Good pass catcher, can run between the tackles, likes to jump outside, but smaller back, but he does kind of pinball well. He does do good yards after contact for the size that he is.
in a league too that's becoming increasingly less physical and violent, guys like this have more and more of a role. And the CFF OGs like yourself will remember that he at one point had wide receiver eligibility on Fantrax. I don't know if you remember that, like a couple years ago. So
Yes.
that just gives you a little bit of like the type of skill set he has. So.
Yeah, the Darren Sproles type back,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
All right, that was the rapid fire segment of Devy Degens. We're gonna get into the meat of the potatoes of the show, but before we do, let's tell everybody at home about your process and how you value running backs in the Devy and a little bit in the CFF side.
Yeah, well, so obviously it differs depending on the format. I'll speak to CFF first. That's my sort of main expertise. So with CFF, mostly, and it's in the name of my publication. I'm really just focused on looking at the players who are going to have the most touches. I mean, if you look at the sort of leading rushers in college football, basically every single season, it's always guys who have 250 or more carries. Very rarely, and if there is an exception, it's like 245 or something like that. And anybody who touches the ball 300 times that year, guaranteed they're in the top of leading rushers. Correct. And they'll have a very productive year. It's a guarantee almost. So for CFF, I'm really, because it is difficult from a bird's eye view to really assess like who is the best football player. Like there's a lot of information that we're not privy to. So I try to sort of leverage mostly just like what systems guys are playing in, like who's going to get the volume, what are the coaches saying, figuring out who's the primary play caller of the program, what does he typically do, what does he think of such and such player, right? That gives you a lot of inclination in terms of what the game plan is going to be. And if it's a guy like Steve Sarkisian or somebody like that who typically, they've actually come out and said that they like to have a lead ball carrier, like that's their plan, that's a great place to start, right? Because that's a guy who's probably going to get the ball, if he plays at Texas, the RB1 20 times a game, he's going to be productive. On the Devy side, it's a little different. You can sort of leverage, or I think it's a good idea to leverage a little bit more sort of the recruiting pedigree of the player and like whether they play at a big program, right? So the draft capital the players get is very important in determining the role and opportunity they'll get in the NFL. And a lot of the draft capital is determined by sort of where did they go to school. The top running back at Alabama, maybe he's not the best CFF player or more productive CFF player than some of these small school guys, but likely he's going to get drafted higher in that draft class. And so finding the players, sort of looking at the top programs, looking at programs that have a pedigree or a pipeline into the NFL. Ohio State's wide receiver room would be an example. Georgia's running back room, right? Some of these places are good places to start. Not a guarantee. I mean, guys transfer out, guys don't make it, but that's a good place to start, right? In terms of looking for future NFL draft picks. So yeah, it's a little different depending on the format.
Yeah, you mentioned, small schools guys that are good at CFF and then may not translate to the next level or the aspect. And you look at like, say Kendall Milton for Georgia as compared to like, Frank Gore Jr., he was a great CFF guy, right? But he might not translate to the next level. With Kendall Milton, it kind of be a guy you want to hold in Devy and see where he could go at the next level.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good example. Maybe an even better example is a guy like Jarrett Stearns, who, for me, in terms of my CFF career, he's probably the best wide receiver I've ever had that 2021 season. But you look at him, it's like, where is he at? He's in the CFL. Probably people don't even know. I know because I did an article a week ago, but he's in the CFL. He plays for Saskatchewan, I think. He didn't really last long in the NFL, right? All kinds of players who weren't as productive as him in college were in the NFL now, who are much better football players. So it is often the case in CFF that the most productive players are not the best college football players.
Jalen Reagor was great for CFF, and then he goes to the NFL, and he's just a blimp on a screen. So
yeah, there you go. That's another. There's countless examples, right? We all night, right? So.
Right, yeah. Just try. Can you give examples for the viewers, just in case they forgot about these guys? They all have guys that they loved and then never translated. So
yeah. No, just hammer the point home. Make sure they understand it.
Yeah. All right, now let's get into the meat and potatoes that we're talking about. This running back stock market. There's a lot of good freshmen coming in. There's a couple of freshmen from last year. We're going to kind of mix 2 and 2, and we're going to see where you value these guys. And, what would someone have to do if they were trying to acquire these guys heading into the new season? So the 4 guys I got out here are freshman running back James People. He's over at Ohio State. A guy that I'm big on. Ole Miss running back Kedrick Reeskano. Nate Frazier, we spoke about in the rapid fire from Georgia. And Abu Sama from Iowa State Cyclones. So with those four, give us your value on them if you want to go from least value to the highest value, or however you want to do it. And then if someone was trying to acquire, say, Peoples or Reese Cano, what would you think they would have to package to get those type of players?
Okay, yeah. So as far as the first question in terms of just valuing these players, so it would differ quite a bit depending on the format. So for CFF, for example, the only one of the four who's been productive already and who gets drafted in basically every draft is Abu Sama, the Iowa State kid. And there's a lot of optimism about him, like for this season. Like he might be the bell cow there. He might have a very good CFF season. In terms of sort of after that, Reese Cano is the other guy who's a sophomore.
Right.
You said you like him. I know some people also. There's quite a few, not quite a few, but I know there's some other people who are excited about him. There are some rumors that Logan Diggs might be missing more time than people are expecting. So Reese Cano might find himself in a position where he's getting more touches than people might expect. But he's a guy where I don't think he gets drafted in most CFF drafts right now, unless it's a deep league. And the reason for that is, he hasn't done anything yet. Like he's been in college 1 year, but he didn't actually play last year. And then the other two are incoming freshmen. I know Fraser is People's, I believe, his class 23, or was he in?
No, he's this class.
He's this class. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's running back 7 in this class.
Yeah. Okay. Some of these guys, they blend together, but so Fraser and Peoples, incoming freshmen, and as I mentioned, Fraser could find himself in the mix this year, but for CFF, like he's really not a draftable player. That ETN's the RB1 there. So unless this is a very strange or very deep CFF format, like it's hard to justify reaching for Fraser. And same deal with Peoples. Peoples actually even worse because Henderson and Judkins are there. Those two guys are going to monopolize carries. And you have Will Howard. He's going to score rushing touchdowns. So it's a very difficult position for him to actually do anything this year in CFF. So Fraser and Peoples for CFF really aren't draftable players. Sabma is easily number one. Reese Cano, there's an idea there of how he could be valuable in a path. For Devy, though, it'd almost be inverted. Because like I said earlier, you're looking at these players who are coming through big programs. That's a huge plus, right? I mean, in all four of these guys, they're at least at Power 4 programs. So it's not necessarily like a group of 5 versus like a high-end P5. But still, I would look at a guy like Fraser, the pedigree of that position group at Georgia. They like basically every player who comes through there, unless they transfer, they make it to the NFL. So that's a guy where you feel pretty good. I mean, he had a high pedigree as a recruit as well. Like he has a very nice skill set if you look at his highlights or whatever. I mean, I'm not a scout, but he catches passes nicely. He sort of has some nice traits if you look at this tape. People similar deal. He playing at Ohio State. That's another sort of good pipeline. They've put a lot of backs in the league too. Everybody thinks about the wide receivers at Ohio State, but they've got a lot of guys in the league too at running back, like J.K. Dobbins. Look at Ezekiel a few years ago. So
Eddie George going back,
Yeah, you can go back even for he was definitely a volume pig in his time. So
yes.
I mean, in terms of the Devy value, I'd probably almost invert that list, even though it's hard for me to say that because I know Sama already has some proven production. So in terms of risk reward, how risky do you want to be? But
let me ask you a question real
Go
quick.
ahead.
We're talking someone talking, I was my concern is like they got like a kind of a QB competition going over there, right? With Beck and Cole. It's like, and they seem to kind of be more of a passing offense. I think he had 3,000 yards, Beck, or close to that. So it's like outside of Hall, really, like they haven't had anything since then, right? And he only had, what did he have? 85 carries, I think, last year, Sama, for them. Less than 100, I believe. So it's
he only sort of came on towards the end though. Like he finished the year with a big game. I think it was one big game, maybe two. So take his production with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just kind of like that's where I like throw a little caution. Because you look at the program and the direction they've kind of gone over the years, you know what I mean? It kind of seems to be more of a high volume passing offense.
Yeah.
So it's like I get nervous there. And when you say Frazier, it's ETN, and I'm with you there. And I agree you could get I feel like there's a lot of injury backs, man. You go both Robinsons have been injury prone, Paul's been injury prone, right?
Yeah.
I know they're all 4 and 5 star guys, and Georgia loves Paul. That's their guy. So it's like he's kind of buried, but there could be some opportunity. So for that case, his value kind of it's kind of in limbo, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and your point's well taken about Iowa State as well. Because like they have some really good receivers too this year. They're probably going to pass the ball around. I'm expecting Sama though will be the RB1 there. As to
Yes.
how much that they run the ball, of course that's up for they lost their OC as well. They're replacing their OC. I can't even pronounce his last name. It's a very strange last name, but he's at LA now. They like promoted the offensive line coach or something like that. So there is a little bit of uncertainty there. But even with Georgia, right, like their offense lately has been more pass oriented than people might expect, right? With Carson Beck especially coming back, they're going to pass the ball probably more than you would expect typically. But I see your point. Like Branson Robinson.
And Roderick does both, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, but Branson's the one who's coming off of like he had a horrific knee injury
Yeah.
last summer. So and like he tore like everything in his knee. So it's not a case where like he's I think he's back now, but he's not going to be really
As explosive? Is he going to be, you know what I mean?
well,
Like,
I just don't even think he's going to be that much. Like he's not going to be relied on. They're not going to give him the ball probably more than 10 times in the game because they're
right.
not going to risk him injuring it again. Like they did the same thing with Andrew Paul. Like Paul tore his ACL and everything else, I think, 2 summers ago. So he missed 2022, and then he came back for 23.
He got hurt again, right?
Barely played in 23.
Yeah.
So just to tell you, like it takes some like for some of these injuries, especially the one that Branson had, it'll take probably like another season for him to really get right. So your point about there being opportunity at Georgia, definitely well taken. I think there is opportunity there. But as far as like the Devy outlook, like it's we're looking further than just this season, right?
Yes.
We're looking down the road. So if a guy like Sama, even if he sort of is highly productive this season, it's not really necessarily like the be all end. Like if you're thinking from Devy, his college production doesn't really do anything for you. You're really looking for the projection of like what is he gonna become in the NFL, right? And I think the ceiling is much higher for a guy like Frazier, even a guy like Peoples compared to Sama. Riscano, I just don't really know yet. He's more of a wild card for me at this point. It's hard for me to sort of value. I haven't really seen much. He hasn't played at all in college. He's very similar to the freshman guys. He's been in college one more year, so it's hard to really value him.
Yeah, he was buried behind the deep backfield. You had Judkins and Ulysses. Who's still there. He should be the banger of that backfield for Ole Miss, I would assume. And now with you dropping, and it was about Diggs. I knew he was going to miss some time. That makes it seem like maybe 4 games or so.
Look, unsubstantiated rumors is just the stuff I've seen in group chats with some of the C2C guys, but some of them were saying they're drafting Riscano or looking for because they think Diggs might be missing sort of substantial time this season. So unsubstantiated rumors, I wouldn't advise anybody like trade off of that knowledge.
Right.
That's it was an interesting nugget for me, and for me, I've been avoiding Diggs ever since. So
yeah, I just like Riscano's inside run game. He's not afraid to run in between the tackles to bounce it outside, and he has really good hands in the pass game. He's kind of like a little bit of like a squished down like Aaron Jones.
Oh, is he? Do you know how big he is? Like, what's his size?
I believe he's 5'11". I think he's 5'11". I want to say 201, 202.
Okay, so like regular, like he doesn't have like some abnormal. He's not too small or not too.
No. He's a prototypical size. Just a little bit, maybe a little bit undersized. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if he's 5'10", 200, I mean that works in college. That's
right.
Fine. So
yeah. Like I said, he's got good hands. So that's usually a bonus to keep you on the field. So.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, and Ole Miss is probably going to be passing a lot this year, but if you can catch passes out of the backfield, never hurts, right? So.
Right. No, exactly. Especially with Dart and the way that they're kind of making that offense seem to be more pass heavy this year. They're losing the bell cow. I said earlier in other pods, I feel like they could lean more on the pass game where guys like Diggs bringing him in. He's more of a pass catcher back to begin with. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like they could be more pass heavy in general. So I think
definitely.
Those are the 4 guys. I like where you're at. Devy's flipping it and the CFF flipping it because Sama obviously has produced, and these other guys haven't. But I'll talk about the guys that haven't. Are there some players that you'd be willing to package to acquire Peoples or Frazier that have done things? I know we're talking Devy, but guys that have performed, maybe in the same category as a Sama, who are like sophomore this year that maybe like Jaheim White or guys like that you would package together to go and get these guys.
Yeah, well, I'll speak to some names that I view in the sort of the same category. As far as like trading, that's kind of dependent on the format. There's other variables involved there to sort of speak on the specifics. But other players within the same category that I'd view as sort of tradable or like for like type of assets. I mean, you could look at the incoming freshman class. There's some interesting names. I mean, one of the guys you mentioned earlier, Taylor Tatum at
Mhm.
Oklahoma, right? I mean, Sawchuck's he's in his third year. He could very well leave after this season. I mean, he's by all accounts he's going to be the lead guy there. He could have a productive season. He could be gone 2025. That backfield will be open. Tatum was exceptionally productive in
Yeah.
Texas high school football as a high school player. And speaking of Texas, I mean, you can look at there's a couple names. I know you're a Jaden Blue guy, so this might hurt you. But, like Cedric Baxter, I don't know if that's cheating or not. Like he's kind of a guy who he gets taken very highly in CFF drafts right now, but
Yeah.
I think that's a little inflated just based off of people sort of gambling that he's going to be RB1 there. But you can even look to a year behind him, Jared Gibson, incoming freshman,
Yes.
right? So that's a guy where if you missed out on Blue, you missed out on Baxter, or you don't want to pay the price for them, you can look to the next guy, Gibson. He's a 5-star. They've done a good job recruiting in that room. So Jared Gibson would be another guy where I'd compare him to Frazier and Peoples, very similar profiles, high
Yeah.
profile recruit, big program. So a lot of similar ingredients. You can look at. I know there's been a lot of change on the Michigan staff, but a guy like Jordan Marshall,
Okay.
that's a running back. He's very similarly sized. Well, he's a little bigger, but similar look to Blake Corum, and obviously Corum is very prolific in that offense for the last. I don't have to tell people that they already know
Yeah.
that.
I got a guy I want to throw out there, see
Yeah,
where
go,
we're at.
go ahead.
I think he could get time this year. I'm got my fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Cade Durham. What are your thoughts on Cade Durham at LSU?
Yeah, you could. I mean, they've got a couple of young guys. I know they've got another one, Caleb Jackson, who's
Right.
also there. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if they're in the same class or
I
not.
think he's a year ahead of him. I think he's one
Oh,
class
okay.
ahead.
Yeah, I mean, LSU is interesting. Obviously, again, when we talked about Diggs earlier, so Diggs
Right.
transferred out in the offseason, and so now there's an opening there. And Diggs was, pretty productive. So there's a big vacancy there in terms of touches. Uh,
Emery's gone. I think Emery graduated, right? John Emery
yeah,
Jr.
and that
gone.
guy,
He
like,
couldn't get into those out of trouble. So
yeah, he was always in trouble or injured. He just wasn't. He was
right.
basically non-factor anyways while he was there. So that situation, and another one, Amari Goodwin, I think transferred out as well. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
remember him, but he's at UAB now. So that backfield is
It's
they've lost
thin.
a lot of
Yeah.
bodies, and that entire offense really is they've cycled through a lot of players now. Their wide receiver room is spent. I mean, their top two guys off the NFL. Quarterback is off the NFL. So, but they do return a good offensive line, LSU. So if there is a guy, whether it be Durham or Caleb Jackson, you could be looking at a lot of value there. And I suspect a lot of people aren't thinking about those guys right now. So, in the offseason, if you're in the CFF Dynasty League or something like that, you might sort of want to think about trying to acquire guys like that. But if you're talking about trade value, I mean, I wouldn't want to pay a high price because it's quite a gamble. We don't really know who's going to be the RB1 there, if there even is one, right?
Right.
And LSU's, Brian Kelly's RB1s, while they have been good in the past, they've not been like amazing, right? He's not had like a great sort of CFF RB. So, yeah, I mean, I'd be intrigued about those names too, but I wouldn't want to pay too high of a price. Yeah, who else? I mean, you could even look to. I hate to keep mentioning the same names, but Nate Frazier, he's not the only RB who's coming to Georgia in this class. There's two others, right? And Fraser isn't even on campus right now.
Right.
Chauncey Bowens, the kid from Florida, he's lower ranked as a recruit, but he's on campus now. So he's going through spring ball. He could be a guy who is also involved early on. As we said, there's wide open backfield there. And he has pretty pretty good tape, man. Like he's got these huge thighs. He bounces off tackles. So he's another intriguing player. They've got another one, Dwight Phillips. He's a track star. They brought in 3 running backs in this class. So there's quite a few there at Georgia. You could take a lot of different gambles, a lot of picks. And if you're on the Devy side, you could even try to acquire all 3 and just hedge your bets and say, well, I know
Yeah.
one of them
Right.
comes out. Yeah. So
Shoot for one of them. You got them all. So whatever one
yeah,
hits, then you
yeah.
can push the other. What are your thoughts? I know Dylan Sampson seems to be the RB1 in Tennessee, right?
Mhm.
He proved that with Nico in that bowl game, kind of both of those guys being the bell cow for the team. But they got a guy that's 6'1", 200 pounds coming as a freshman, Peyton Lewis. What are your thoughts on Peyton Lewis? Do you think he can get in there and get some carries this year, or you think he's going to be a guy that's just going to be sit back and wait a year before you get to your time?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, I don't know that much about Peyton Lewis, but in terms of Tennessee, like they don't typically monopolize all the rushing touches to one running back.
Right.
So the opportunity should be there. I mean, spring ball is crucial. When you're talking to incoming freshmen, like it's very hard to say before the spring, like, is he gonna, because we need to see what he does. And if the coaches say, yeah, this kid's really good, we like him, we want to get him involved, then sure, yeah, he's probably going to get some touches in the fall, right? But Tennessee it's a program sort of like Georgia, where there shouldn't be one running back who just dominates all the touches.
Right.
Some of the younger guys, there'll be an opportunity, whether it's Wilson who sort of capitalizes on that. It's hard to say at this point, but the opportunity should be there.
I love it. All right, this is a absolutely informative episode. I appreciate you taking time on your busy schedule to come on and do this episode with Devy Degens. Before we let you go, again, let the people know your tag and where they can find your work.
Yeah, no, sure. And look, it's been a pleasure to be here. Hopefully we can do this again in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my tag on Twitter is at VolumePigs. If you want to see my website, it's on my Twitter profile, but it's VolumePigs.com. So you can take it from Nino, who's a subscriber. The newsletter, I think, is informative and sometimes entertaining. So I do my best. So.
Yes. Sometimes it's just the pictures alone that you have for the feature image. I'm like, I cannot wait to just read this, because the fact that he was able to correlate this and this together is absolutely phenomenal. So.
I try.
You do very well. Once again, if you don't know this VolumePigs, go follow him. My man does A+ work, especially if you like anything with college football. He's the guy you need to have on your list of guys to follow. This is Devy Degens. I'm your host, Nino Brown. Once again, same face, same place, new face. We out.
Talking Devy. My guys is never shook. It's time